Who were you before you lost your wild self?
That's what we're helping you explore on the Tend Her Wild podcast.
Through questions and tools around how best to listen to your inner voice,
rewild ourselves, and live the most authentic life where we thrive instead of survive.
I'm Betsy.
And I'm Kate.
And we're so glad you've joined us for this episode.
Hello, Tend Her Wild podcast listeners. In today's episode, we have a special guest here in the studio, Sheila Davisson, and we are so excited about this interview.
We've been waiting years, I think, for this interview. We sort of have, right?
Yeah, I think it's timing on when people, come on and tell their story, and it is your time, Sheila. So we are so ready. So Sheila's a local business owner and lifelong fashion enthusiast based here in Iowa City. She's a native of the area and pursued her love of fashion at the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City, where she was honing her expertise in merchandising, buying, fashion marketing, and retail. After gaining valuable experience in the fashion industry throughout the early 2000s, she returned to her hometown to launch Revival Clothing Store in 2003. For over 2 decades, Sheila has curated a retail destination for resale and vintage clothing, bringing a unique and sustainable fashion choices to her community. As the owner and operator of Revival, she's deeply involved in every aspect of the business, from sourcing timeless and sustainable pieces to creating an inviting shopping experience. She's also committed to giving back to her community regularly through supporting local initiatives, small businesses, and charitable causes. Beyond her work in fashion, she's a devoted mother of 2, a strong advocate for social justice. She's particularly passionate about reproductive rights for all, using her platform to support and uplift causes that promote access, inclusivity, and empowerment. She loves discovering hidden vintage gems, fostering creativity in her community, and working toward a more sustainable and just future. That is you in a nutshell.
Wow. How does it feel to have yourself be read about? Yeah. I mean, as you were sitting there,
that it makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, so honest.
Yeah.
But, I'm trying to just, I feel proud that those are the words that are really describing what I've tried to do. And I feel proud of that. And also, I think it also keeps me accountable, right? Mm-hmm. I want to do those things, and it kind of keeps making sure my focus continues in that direction, and kind of check myself now again and make sure I'm on the right path.
I love that.
Me too.
And 22 years you've had Revival?
Yeah, it'll be 22 in September. Yep, it was 2003.
That is an adult child now.
I know.
Sheila, an adult child.
I know. She was like my first one.
Yeah.
It's like graduating college and going off and all other things. So
true.
All right. Well, we're going to get to that eventually because heaven knows I love Revival. I've spent many an hour poking away in there. So we're going to get to that. But we always want to know about your beginnings, where this all started, little Sheila, those first 10 years, and how it led you to where you are sitting here with us today.
Well, I'm from Iowa. I moved to Iowa City with my family, with my parents, when I was like in 3rd grade. So Iowa City native, but definitely my family's been in Iowa forever, Southeast Iowa. Smaller town. Both my parents are from a town called Wapello, and my grandparents were there. I still have cousins, lots of extended family there. But yeah, we moved to Iowa City in 3rd grade. A little bit of moving around. I think too, a lot of my entrepreneurial spirit is from my parents. They both have owned multiple businesses. My dad has always had a accounting business for small businesses, a lot of farmers. But then he's also dabbled in lots of other things, my mom as well. So I grew up watching that.
Normal.
Yeah. So to me, that was just something I was used to. It felt like something we were always doing.
And you saw your parents take risks.
Yeah. Yes, there were risks, and some of them worked. A lot of them didn't. And I'm extremely grateful that they did foster love. And throughout all of it, we were going to be together. We were going to figure it out. Right. So even when it wasn't working, it was, we'll be together. We'll figure it out. It'll all work.
Okay. Wow. So when business choices or decisions didn't work out for them, the attitude was, it's going to be okay. We're all together. We love each other. We're going to work this through.
Yeah. And
that's like invaluable lesson.
I know it really is. And I feel, again, almost a little responsibility to make sure that is passed along.
Carry that through.
Yeah. And
I always think entrepreneurship, you have to be resilient. Yeah. Like it is a requirement that you have that muscle. And so it sounds like you had examples and models of that.
Yeah.
And I see you as incredibly resilient as well in the work that you do. And so it started early for you.
I guess so. Yeah.
Where did the fashion interest start? Like I'm imagining like a third grader trying on different outfits, like
cutting out the dolls.
It's true. It's true. Like, or those fashion plates. I had those fashion plates. I adored those.
Oh, yeah, those.
Yes. Loved those. I really don't know. I do think my mom had more of an artistic streak than she would ever give herself credit for. So I think she fostered a lot of that. But the fashion was just, I loved it. I loved magazines and catalogs. I was never necessarily the designer, but always a curator, editor, from the page. I will pick out the things that I think are the best or like make my own combination with it. So when I studied fashion, I always knew I didn't necessarily want to start from nothing, right? I didn't want to design. I wanted to edit. I wanted to be the buyer or the editor kind of situation.
How did you know that?
I don't know. Because I've never been, I was a pretty shy kid too. Like I knew those things about myself, but I was not one to be loud and say like, look at me, I have all the right answers. It would be more of a subtle sort of in the background kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think about it like theater, like the actors versus the set,
the lighting and the sound people.
Making everyone look good.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And creating space.
Did you, like as a teenager, were you experimental with your fashion? Were you the kid that came to school that people were like, what is she wearing? Either positive or negative? Like,
I think I wanted to be that.
Okay.
I don't think I had that confidence yet.
Okay.
So I would say I didn't take nearly as many risks as I wanted to, right? Like I didn't want to be different necessarily. I could see the value in that, especially as I got older, of course, but younger, I didn't want to necessarily stand out because I didn't want the spotlight on me, or that didn't feel good to me. But I think I just learned too that it's really an expression. Like it is how you're feeling. Like, and it's going to change day to day, month to month, where you're at in your life or what's happening. And sometimes you want those clothes to say, talk to me, look at me.
Yeah.
And sometimes you want them just to be comfortable and nothing.
Yeah.
And,
And that's your store. I know we're jumping ahead, but that's what you created. Like you walk in there and those elements to me are very apparent. Like the comfort, like I know the shirt that you're you kind of have taken that and made a place around those ideas that it depends on the day. Do you want comfort or do you want
color? Do you want to be standing out? Do you want to?
And we all have those aspects within us, right? And it's going to change time to time. And you can use the clothes to lean on or not, because there's some days too that I kind of force myself. Like I have things I got to do today. I'm going to to help me get in that state.
It's like your costume. I'm the same way. Yeah. And it's amazing how it impacts your mood and it impacts your confidence, like what you put on.
Yeah.
It really does. It is an expression of where you're at that day.
Yeah. I really feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And believe in that.
So you got through high school, it sounds like. What were your passions in high school?
Well, when I got through high school, so again, I was still not really ready to take that leap. I was still really interested in being good, being
good girl.
Welcome
Yeah.
to the club, Sheila. The good
Yes,
girl.
years.
Here we all are. Yes.
Yeah. So when I graduated high school, I was going to go to the University of Iowa, and I was going to go to pharmacy school, and I was going to do that. And because that was a reasonable, like that was a respected career. I could do it. There was this path, and it was like, oh yeah, that's a good path. Good choice, Sheila.
Good choice,
Right.
Sheila.
Oh my
Everybody
gosh.
telling
Can
me
you
that.
imagine Sheila in a white coat every day instead of the amazing fashion that she wears every day?
The irony of that is
The
not
irony,
lost. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was the plan. And thankfully, I had friends. I had a boyfriend at the time who had decided to pursue a film career in New York. So I had a few other like forces in my life that were like, oh, yeah, but there's this over here. You could try this path. Right. And
Interesting.
so I feel like watching him do that. And then I was like, well, I guess I could do that. I could study fashion. I like fashion. I've always enjoyed that. And then I just started looking and I got accepted to FIT and FIT was like a state school. So it was also accessible. Like I didn't really have the resources. I mean, that was different. Financial aid and student aid and all that kind of thing was a little bit different in the 90s, but like I didn't have the personal resources to move myself to New York and go to like Parsons but FIT is a state school. So I was able to go to New York, get an apartment, earn some residency, and have a state tuition school, right?
Wow.
So,
Were you there in 92?
no, I was there in 96.
Okay. I lived there in 92.
Oh, you did? I didn't know
in the
that.
Fashion Institute.
You're
You lived
kidding.
in the Fashion Institute?
For 1 week, I lived there.
Oh, you're kidding. I had no idea.
I was interning in DC.
Mhm.
The Democratic National Convention was in New York City. I took the train down and they put me up in the Fashion Institute.
Oh my
All
goodness.
the fashion kids that, little girl from Iowa, I was like, wow, look at her.
Lawyer girl in
Look
her
at
black
Sure,
suit.
sure.
Yeah. She's hanging out with all the fashion
Yeah.
kids.
But it was such a cool experience.
Yeah, because it is in the fashion industry. It is in the garment district. It is like, it's like a movie. You're walking to class and there's like a rack being just like taken down the street full of dresses.
Wow.
Or somebody's pushing one of those, canvas bins that's full of shoes.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my gosh, this really happened.
I just watched The Devil Wears Prada.
Yeah.
So it reminds me of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm curious about is Iowa girl raised right in the Midwest. You go to the big city. What was your adjustment period like? And was it rocky, or were you from day one, like eyes wide open, like, oh my gosh, here, I've made it?
When I look back on it, I've forgotten some of the rocky, but there was a lot of rocky. I mean, when I first walked into that apartment, so I remember the summer before I moved there, we went to go find an apartment, and the first two fell through after we had left. Like at that point in time, you'd sort of like put in an application. You didn't know what you were going to get. And this was number 3. So number 1 and number 2 fell through. And this was number 3. And at this point back in, I was like, no big deal. This is an adventure. Loved it all. I remember I walked in and I burst into tears because it was like it was so tiny.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a little bit bigger than this, but it wasn't much.
Yeah.
It was a lofted bed. It had the kitchen was like a camper kitchen, only had a sink that was the half size. And I remember walking in and I was like, what the F did I just
doing?
But I do think there's also that part of me that was like, well, you can't turn back now. You've already.
The risk taking.
Yeah.
Here I am.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
So I just had to lean in and do that. And I did going to FIT, I suppose, too. Then I was drawn to maybe some other people in that same setting kind of thing. I definitely found a few other Midwest people. One of the benefits, my boyfriend at the time had already created some contacts, right? So I did have a group of friends. So there were a couple girlfriends that luckily I connected with. So that made
the transition
it made all the difference. So, but it took a while.
You studied merchandising, like what did you study?
Right. So FIT was split into 2 schools at that point. Basically, there was the design side, and then there's like the business side, which is merchandising, buying, which is a 2-year degree. And then you can go on to get a bachelor's. So I got my associate's degree in fashion merchandising and buying. And then I went on to get my bachelor's in marketing for fashion industries and international trade. And so that has the piece of like how the actual business of importing, exporting works, the marketing of, the PR side of it, but also a lot of sales and advertising. And so it kind of gives you that fuller picture of what a brand really does, all the pieces of it.
So did you then stay in New York for a while?
Yeah. So I went to school. So it was a 4-year school. And then I stayed and worked for about 3 years after that. I remember, so I talk to my parents about this now and I laugh. And because I feel like now I have, my daughter is going to she's a sophomore in high school, and I have friends who are we have our kids in college. And so I feel like it's taking me back to that time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. You relive it.
So when I was about to graduate from FIT, and I got a job offer from Federated, which was at that point Macy's, Bloomingdale's. It was like the big conglomerate of a lot of the department stores. And they had an executive training program, which is basically the track you get on to be in corporate retail, right? You have a couple years of training, and then you either go into the buying side, you go into the marketing side, you go into the product development side. It's what I had worked for and strived for. It was, and I got it. And I don't even remember what state of mind I was in at that point, but I remember calling my parents and I was like, I don't think I want to do it.
You get your dream job.
You're like,
And I just think about them on that other side being like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Right? What have you been working toward? What do you mean?
But I was like, I think I want to look at I had gotten an internship in PR. And so I was going to do, I had a small PR job with this really great company called KCD, which is huge. And one of my best friends still runs it now. And so it was this other side of fashion that I hadn't seen. It seemed pretty glamorous. It was the fashion shows. It was the celebrities. It was all of that. And I just wasn't ready to be on the track.
Yeah.
And that track almost feels a little more like the pharmacist.
Yeah.
Inside the fashion world.
Yeah.
It's like this is the traditional path inside of fashion. And you're like, I don't see myself.
You were always kind of outside the box.
So I guess I tried and there were lots of little things, right? Those 3 years spent after college I worked in PR, I worked in product development. I did get a very short gig with Polo. That was very corporate, and I was I was horrible at it. Like it was one of the first jobs that I'd had that I was like, I suck at this. Like I don't know how to work this. Like this wasn't a natural place for me, to be in the cubicle and the dynamics of
very regimented.
Yeah, it just wasn't me, and I didn't excel. So that also was, just a rough time of just sort of trying to figure out where my place was. And then I did end up going back to retail, which I didn't realize. I'd always done retail as a way to support myself, right? So I always had to work through college. So I always had a job.
What stores did you work in? I need to know.
New York.
Well, so I started at Express because I had gotten a job at the old Capitol Mall when Express was here back in 1996.
I shopped at that store all the time.
Me too.
And so I was able to transfer to a store out there. So that's where I started. And then I went to Club Monaco. And
French.
Yeah. And then I think from Club Monaco, that was my last corporate retail job. And then I started working for small locally owned stores. I got the opportunity to work for this woman named Susan out in the Hamptons. So one summer in college, that was something that we would, that was like something so cool to go do, was go live in the Hamptons. But of course, I am not wealthy, nor come from a wealthy
how do you
family.
afford to live in the Hamptons in college?
So basically, you could go get a serving job for the summer, right? You live in a crappy house amongst all the rich, beautiful houses, but all the service people go. You spend the summer, you party, you get up, you go serve, wait tables.
And you party.
And you party. And so I had fun, but I made great contacts. And I worked for this woman who had a kids store, a clothing. Like it was a higher end kids store right on the main street. And we just clicked and I loved it. So I worked for her that summer a little bit. I came back and worked again. And then after college, and like sometimes she would meet me in the city when she would come in to do buying. So I learned a lot about that process from her. And then after college, this was sort of the end of my New York days. She asked me to come out there and manage her store. So for about 6 months to a year, I managed that store and I had a reverse commute. So I would go to the Hamptons during the week and then I would come to the city on the weekend. So
interesting.
It was interesting.
I worked kids high-end retail for all of high school. I worked for 3-4 years in a children's clothing store called the Red Lollipop, and they had all kinds of high-end children's clothes. I used to buy boys extra large polo shirts.
Oh my God,
because that was like what the style was. And so I would get this discount and I would wear all these cool boys polo shirts.
Oh,
that is amazing.
A picture of you.
Oh, I'm sure I have. Yeah.
What was that?
In Pella, Iowa.
Oh, okay.
It was a really beautiful children's clothing store. So
those children's stores can be really magical.
Yeah.
Like,
and to watch kids
faith.
grow and to have them try things on and come out. And
Yeah, for
I
sure.
loved it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's very fun. And very rarely do you have that, like, unlike like women's retail, you often are dealing with things that really have nothing to do with clothing or like sometimes there are some things, how we're feeling about ourselves can come out, right? In customer service.
Sometimes.
But in kids, people are, they're happy.
They're joyful.
Yeah. They're
baby
joyful.
gifts.
Or like you're just buying adorable things for your kids. And if you want to shop in there without your kids, that happens, or they get to go over there
and play in the play corner.
Exactly.
Pick things out for them.
So it's good vibes in those usually.
So what was it that made you decide to leave the Mecca of fashion, New York City, and come back to the Midwest?
I really wanted a family and I wanted some roots, I think. I don't think I realized it. So when I left New York, my intention was to come. I was broke. So like I had to come live in my parents' basement and I wanted to move to Portland. So I was like, I'm going to move back home to Iowa. Still had lots of good friends there or here. And I was like, can I come live for a little bit? I'm going to save some money and then I want to move to Portland. Because I had it was also just that point in time. A lot of my friends in New York were leaving. So I had a number of friends move out that way. I had gone to visit. It seemed cool. I had always, and I wanted to have my own store. But in New York, that just didn't seem feasible. And I wanted a family. I wanted to have kids. I wanted a place to have roots, and so I knew that wasn't going to happen in New York. I could see that wasn't happening because I just couldn't really afford it.
Right.
It was hard. You had to work so much. I was just always working. I wasn't meeting a partner. I had sort of started dating my now husband, who is also from Iowa, and he would come and pass through New York City. He was a tour guide. He would take like foreigners, a lot of Germans, and a lot of Europeans and some Asian groups, and he would take them on a 2-week cross-country van trip.
What?
Wow.
And so he would like pick up a group every Saturday And so friends of friends, he's from Iowa City. So like we just had mutual friends. And, the choice was either like, oh, should I sleep in my van or I could crash with Sheila? And, and so
that was an obvious choice.
Yeah. And so from that, we kind of started dating. And so then when I moved back to Iowa, this was not the plan, but we both found ourselves here back in Iowa. And he had come back from a recent trip to New Zealand because basically he would do this tour guiding thing, make some money, and then go travel somewhere. So we were just sort of both back here, not totally knowing what we were doing. But we knew we wanted to be together. And so that's then how Revival was sort of born, was basically I don't want to leave Iowa. Wasn't quite ready to admit that, I suppose. But then I was like, well, I could open this store. And I had enough contacts and friends and thrifting and DIY, it was the early 2000s. So like that was
just new.
Yeah.
You were at the forefront, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we have to start there because like my daughter now is 13, 14, and she is always like, I want to go thrift. Can you take me thrifting? And I'm thinking like, that wasn't even part of my lexicon when I was her age.
No.
And so not even in college when I had no money to spend on clothes and wanted to buy clothes, there was no, I didn't thrift. So I feel like how did that come forward for you at a time before it was sort of the cool thing to do?
Well, there's definitely a couple stores. At that point in time, I was living in Brooklyn. And I would go to the store called Beacon's Closet, like weekly. And that was the buy, sell, trade. New, used, sort of the combination. That was definitely the inspiration for Revival. But also like there was a culture on vintage clothing, right? So like I had a little taste of that. But it also was out of necessity. It was how I could do it, right? Like I could go thrifting. Back then I didn't call it thrifting, we call it picking. But
picking.
Like, we would go pick like at estate sales and thrift stores and all of that, right? Anywhere, and find little gems, bring them back in a curated fashion so that you didn't have to go to the thrift store, right? So it was sort of, and then you would pay that little bit of extra because I already did that for you.
Yeah.
By the way, side note, do you still love to go and pick?
Yeah.
Or have you graduated from that because you've done it for so long as your job? Like, do you still get the high from it that you?
It's funny. The other day, I went with my husband. We had some time and we were looking for some specific things. And I went and I was like telling him in the car, like, sometimes it makes me, I guess it's just nostalgia. Like, sometimes it can make me a little bit sad because things have changed. And I don't necessarily know all the tips and tricks. And so it has changed.
Yeah.
Like it's different. And fast fashion changed things.
Yeah.
And there's, sometimes, but then I'll go to places like Artifacts and be inspired. Right. So I think too, making sure that I'm not just in the thrift store, like also trying to stay connected and seeing what other vintage people are doing, what younger people are doing, like that is inspiring to me. So you get that high from visiting those other things. But yeah, I don't quite have the same patience or the same drive to find it myself anymore. It used to almost be very meditative. I would go in, and you would look through every single thing and it was this repetitive, meditative thing. So I don't really have that anymore, the drive to do that. But
today's episode is brought to you by Dr. Yoga Mama, which is all the many offerings I have blending psychological science with the ancient wisdom of yoga and mindfulness. Join me for a yoga class, a meditation weekend, an online course, Wisdom Wednesday, which is the first Wednesday of every month, or maybe even an international retreat like Greece in the fall of 2025. By providing spaces and experiences for people to look inward, it is my great honor to watch people become the change they wish to see in the world.
This podcast is being sponsored by Kate Moreland Coaching. As a transformational coach and an advocate for authenticity and well-being, I work to support individuals and organizations navigating challenging times. Whether you are an individual, a leader, or an organization, your creative power lies in your authenticity. Doing the work to understand your strengths and acknowledge the patterns and rocks that are in your way is the path to well-being. Whether it's your career or your relationship with yourself or others, transformational change begins within. To learn more, reach out to me at katemorelandcoaching.com. So I'd love for you to share the inspiration for the name. Seems kind of obvious, but I'm curious how you came up with that name and what does it mean the same today as it did when you opened?
That's a great question.
I agree. I love this question.
Yeah. Well, I mean, really, it really was about revival is about giving something life again, right? Giving it another path, right? Like giving something that maybe somebody has cast aside, a new life, a new adventure, and reviving that. And finding, just recently, our store manager, Maggie, wrote this. She's restarting our newsletter.
Okay.
And she talked about, what is the new big thing? And the new big thing maybe is nothing. Like maybe we don't need that. Maybe we just need to take what we have or take something that someone else has had and give that life and give that.
I love that.
I do too.
That could be the inspiration. So I feel like that's what revival is about. And it is about kind of curating that mix of like maybe using all the things you have in your closet, but you can rework them, right? Or like you bring it in and you swap it with your community member. And now all of a sudden you have this newness and you have inspiration. They do too, but really we're just, being circular.
It's such a feminine way to do business too, which I just want to honor in you because I do think the community aspect, the sharing, the trading, all of that feels so feminine and the community you're creating.
Yeah.
Because when I go in there, you and I have gone in together. We're like in there for like an hour. Like it's not just in and out. Like
sure, no, it's so much to
and
find
you run
and
into
see.
people, and you're like,
and it's all ages. Like I was in there at the start of your 50% off extravaganza at the end of last season, and I walked in and I didn't know that was what was going on, and it was like every age group. There were the young college girls, there were the young moms, there was the middle-aged women, there was the 70-year-old women. I was like, how did she create something that speaks to every age? It's not just the young girls that are in there shopping. It's all age ranges. Yeah. And that's I would say a pretty rare thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be honest. It's not like that was an intention, but I do think that comes out of being authentic and being true to not like judging fashion, not letting it be a judgment or a have to. Like everyone coming in is welcomed and we're inclusive, and like you are finding your own style within that. Mm-hmm. If you want some help, we'd love to help you with that. But also to like, I always teach my staff, like, the number one thing you're doing is trying to understand people and read them. Do they want your help? Do they not? Be available for when they do want your help, but also read when they're in their
meditative state, looking through. Yeah.
So let that happen. Just always,
Yeah.
But so I think that maybe is how that has happened. I love that. I mean, that like fills my heart, and especially just knowing that women can come together to do that as an activity, as a place of connection, or knowing that, some people, especially I would say too, like after some traumatic events, like the election per se, that was a tough week. We all were needing spaces where we could be together, but nobody knew what we wanted to say. We didn't really have to. You could just be.
Retail therapy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Really, truly.
Yeah. Well, and finding community. There's definitely community there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a funny story to share with you. So my daughter's old college roommate came to Iowa City last weekend. So she was staying overnight with us, but she was here with her family, her father and her sister. And they had plenty planned, so we only saw her at night. But one of the things they did was go to Revival because Meg introduced Sydney to that store, and they go there every time she comes to town. And now it's her favorite store. And she bought several cute things, but she sent a photo to Meg and I of her dad in Revival with two other young boyfriends who were standing outside the dressing rooms waiting. And he's holding court and telling them more stories about his service. And like they were just having this beautiful conversation in the racks of Revival.
Beautiful.
And I just thought, wow, that it expanded kind of my feeling about what you've created. And, you know, she walked out to show him what, and he would weigh in, like, yeah, that's good. Or, but I just thought that experience for her, she said, I'll never forget seeing my dad, you know.
Men are welcomed at Revival.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I wanted to acknowledge that for you and let you hear that because I thought that was such a beautiful moment.
That's great.
So, yeah. Well, you talked about your staff, and I wanted just briefly touch on you as a leader of what you've built. You said you hire these other amazing women of all ages to help you, but you're also really empowering them. How has it been for you? Because, you know, it's hard to let go. And you talked about kind of as the years have gone, you've had to kind of, which I think is a very wonderful leadership trait. I believe leadership is all about empowering others. But that's not easier said than done.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's been lots of different eras within Revival. You know, the beginning, it was, of course, just pure dedication. I was there constantly, right? Like all the time, just giving it my all. And then realizing that, like, if I'm going to get these other things in life, like a family, if I want a mother, if I want, you know, like I can't, yes, there's certainly value in my kids and, you know, seeing how hard I work, but I also want to show them that this is not everything. And so that definitely made me kind of change, right? Assess how I was leading. And also there were definitely times where I felt like I had to really be the leader to keep it together. Like people were depending on me, not only for their income, but also just to be a leader. I don't know. You know, it just, and then sometimes that was heavy, right? Like sometimes I'm like, I don't know if I'm doing this well. And then just always being connected to it, you know? So I feel like there's been ebbs and flows with it where it's like, I mean, I am of course so proud of it, but there are times when it was like, oh man, is this all I am kind of thing. But I do feel like having a staff, empowering them and letting them kind of take on some of that weight too. It's like, it doesn't all have to be on me. We're doing this together. And they do take ownership when you let them. So, right, like the most important thing is to allow someone to own it. Yeah, they're going to make a mistake, but they're going to teach you something. They're going to let you see another perspective that you're like, oh, I never thought about that. And then COVID was a giant change, of course, for everyone, all of us. But for me, that really, and there was this other layer for us during COVID because my building was going under construction. So I had a planned closure coming up. And it was a time in my career that I was like, this would be the perfect time to walk away. Like if I wanted to, I could, and it would make sense. But I didn't want to, and I wasn't ready. But it did show me how much I needed the pause and how if I did hand things over and allow other people to grow it and empower them, it grew even bigger.
Yeah. And more sustainable for you.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Revival got a revival.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Had a revival.
Yeah.
I remember those days because you had pop-ups around town in between.
Oh,
store
I remember that too. I remember going to a upstairs pop-up place.
Yeah.
I don't know where it was, but I remember walking upstairs.
It was up above Jimmy John's.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, I think too, I just learned that's when I learned also Revival. It wasn't just me. Like it had created
its own entity,
its own space, its own energy. And my job wasn't to control it. It was to allow it to happen. Right. So
that's a beautiful way to put it.
My job was not to control it, but to allow it. That's beautiful. That you birthed this thing, and yet then it grows up and it becomes its own person, its own being, its own energy. And your job isn't to control it and micromanage it, but to let it evolve into what it's supposed to be. It's like all good parenting.
Yeah.
These things come through us, but they're not ours, really. And we're just here to help shepherd them into their highest potential.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love that.
I love it. Okay, I want to bring in the social activist piece because not only are you a businesswoman and a mom, but even as you described in your bio, you have this heart for social activism. And I would love for you to describe how you sort of melded that passion into your business and how you use, sort of your community to help shine light on important issues.
Yeah, I would say some of this, I mean, I feel like I've always done that a little bit. I've always tried to really hard to support organizations in the community that I believe in. UAY, Emma Goldman, the arts. Those are things that I think are empowering and give our community the richness and strength that it is. But it wasn't always something you talked about, right? Like it wasn't something that you actively let the business sort of spearhead. And I do think that changed. Again, during the COVID times, during George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, and having a team that is of a different generation that was asking and saying, no, we should stand up and be vocal about what we want to support and what we want to lift up in our time. And so there was a real big shift there where it was like, okay, let's do that. That feels also like it's become something else. And again, I want to help grow that part of it.
Yeah.
So taking the risk that you're going to lose some people, and that's okay.
Yep.
There are plenty of people who still believe that business should not have that opinion, right? I think all of that has changed so tremendously, but when we first started being so vocal about it,
it was
a risk.
It was a risk. There was pushback, and there was a lot of and I just had to be true and be like, how do I want to wake up and feel good about myself and show up to my kids and, my staff. And I want to be able for them to be proud of what we're doing. And so that was really the lead.
And that's where your authenticity really spoke.
Yeah.
It was like, this is who I am. This is who this place is in partnership with all the women that work with you.
Yeah.
This is who we are.
Yeah.
And it's okay to not be for everyone, which I think for women is
it's so scary, right? To be like, oh, I can't piss off this sect of people because what if? And I think we all have that fear of, rejection. And so for you to get really clear on your value system and say it's worth it.
Yeah.
So there might be a certain population that aren't going to come shop at my store because of the signage we have up or what we represent. And that's okay.
That is okay.
But usually, I assume you've found that the others are even more loyal.
Absolutely. And it has been so incredibly rewarding to see the community show up. So like last year, we raised over $35,000 for reproductive healthcare.
I have chills.
I know.
It's an unbelievable amount of money.
And really that came out of, that was the community. That is not us saying we're donating, right? Like that is us being a place to allow people to donate.
So talk about the brilliant way you did this, because I was thinking about that this week. I was like, that was so brilliant how they did that. Can you tell our listeners?
Yeah, sure. There was a big shift in, I don't know if y'all remember, but there was this big change. POS systems changed, COVID changed things where all of a sudden you were allowed to tip for any sort of business. right? If you were using certain platforms, that button pops up. Do you want to leave a tip? Right. And we weren't doing that because, I do try really hard to make sure I pay my staff a livable wage. We do our best, and I try to offer them lots of other things. So the tip doesn't necessarily go to my staff, but what we decided was if everybody could just add a little dollar, or maybe they don't, or maybe every 5 times you're in here, you want to donate $1, we'll donate it for you to Emma Goldman or Iowa Abortion Access Fund. And one of the other things too, I wanted to be really intentional about where it was going to go so that it can be impactful. So instead of giving to 10 different things, trying to really focus on one issue so we could really make an impact. Not that we don't want to support those things, but this is also something that in the end supports many other things.
Yeah.
Right. Bodily autonomy is everything.
Absolutely.
To everyone.
Absolutely.
So if we can support that, that will make bigger impacts everywhere. So that was the idea, was like, let's just turn on the tips and see what happens. And we were blown away. It was $5. It was $50. It was, and it was, people were thankful for it. They were grateful that they had a platform, an easy way for them to do it too, right? It did make it easy. We took on the responsibility of making sure it happened. The money gets there every month, and we're transparent about it, but also 100% of it's going to go to that.
Yeah. And that, I just want to reflect. I feel like even currently, as systems are breaking down, it's going to be these women,
small things,
that are
big things,
create new systems and new ways to still get things done and to still provide the support and the safety nets we need. And we're going to need a whole lot more of it.
100%.
And I just feel like women are going to lead the rebuilding. And you're a leader in that, in how you have done that, because you wouldn't think going in to get a new shirt that you're going to also impact women all over.
And I will say that when that pops up on the screen, it feels really good to say, yep, this is what I'm going to do. It's not, to me at least, an annoyance of like, oh, I can't believe they're asking this question. It's like, oh my gosh, yes. I'm in. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Because it also feels different than sometimes at the random grocery store when something pops up.
Yeah.
That feels different because there's no connectivity to it.
Yeah.
But at Revival, where there's the energy and the signage and just that feeling of we're supporting women, it's like, oh, I'm part of the team here. And heck yes, I'm going to donate.
Yeah.
So however you guys created it, it really works. And the fact that you raised $35,000
I mean,
in 1 year, it is mind blowing.
It's really, really wild. So, and it's been incredibly consistent. Like we will have 1 month so we do it monthly, 1 month where like, it'll be, oh, well, we raised $3,500 last month. And we're like, oh my God, that's amazing. That's huge. I'm going to mentally prepare that next month's probably not going to be that. Just, I don't know, because that's just how I am. And then it's like, but no, people show up. And I think that too is just inspiring to like, again, allow people to shine and allow people to show up, and they will.
Yeah. That feels very much like your life. You started off talking about, I don't want to shine. I want to make others shine. Like when you were younger, you liked to be in the background.
Yeah.
And you've continued that, but you, my friend,
she shines, doesn't she? I know.
But that comes from your desire to uplift everyone around you, your customers, your staff. And so I just want to reflect that to you, that I feel like that light, your light has always been there, and you have quietly been helping others shine, but you're shining.
Yeah.
I mean, you've stepped into your full light.
I feel like you've really stepped into that. What we so often talk about is that potential. Like we all have this brilliant potential, and we're scared. We're scared to step into it. We're scared to lose customers. We're scared to piss other people off. And somehow you've navigated things in such a way that you're really stepping into it. And it's such an honor to see that. And then it gives all of us permission to do the same. Because I think right now what our world needs is women saying, I'm not going to play small anymore.
Right.
I'm going to take risks. I'm going to step up. I'm going to help in the way that I know how to help. And we're going to make this world better. And so thank you for being one of the leaders and examples of what that looks like.
Well, thank you. But also remember too, like I didn't get here without the help of both of you, right? Creating space and, working through those things and knowing there are other women out there going through those same things.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, when I went to the very first, her experience.
Yeah.
I mean, that really shifted things. And so having more of that, right? Just, it does shift things and it changes and it allows people to grow. So thank you. Like I would not be here doing that or feeling, and thank you for saying it.
Yeah, thank you. And it feels good that we can all, it's like what you can see in someone else is also in you. So it's like we're all seeing it in each other. And that's a really beautiful thing.
Yeah.
We got to ask her our last question because she's never answered this question and I want to know what she has to say.
All right. So from listening that Clarissa Pinkola Estes in The Women Who Run with the Wolves says that there are 4 doors into the life of a wild woman. If you have an deep scar, that is a door. If you have an old story, that is a door. If you love the sky and the water so much you can almost not bear it, that is a door. And if you yearn for a deeper life, a full life, a sane life, that is a door. Is there one that just lights up for you, one or more?
I mean, it's always been the 4th one, the deeper life. The fuller life.
The same life.
Yeah.
And you left the busy city to come to a place where you could raise children. You changed how you did your business model so that you could be around more for your family.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And not the constant striving, but just seeking something fuller instead of it having to always get bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
But just having it
full
and better.
Well, let's remind people where they can shop because you also have a beautiful online store.
Yes. So wherever you're listening from, you can check out Revival.
Yeah. RevivalIowaCity.com. So you can shop there 24/7. And then, of course, you can visit us on the Ped Mall 7 days a week. We're there and visit my amazing staff and our fantastic manager, Maggie, who really is captain right now of driving this boat and especially on the online stuff. So she's really doing amazing stuff. So check both of those out. And thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
This has been a wonderful conversation and I feel like I know you even better. When
Agreed. And really inspired for me. I'm walking away with an inspiration for, how do we keep giving? That idea of like, how do we keep figuring out what we want to put our energy towards and then just do it. So thank you for that today.
Oh, thank you guys.
All right.
Thanks for joining us today. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. Come back and rewild with us again next week.